Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Joe Biden was supposed to be the most progressive president since FDR. On the campaign trail back in 2020, it seemed like Joe was giving in to every single leftist demand. Whatever your green-haired college student demanded, Joe was going to follow through and do. But of course, most people knew that that was never gonna happen. Well, I say most people meaning everybody but leftoids, because all of a sudden, the blue ain't on leftoid Twitter crew, the activist left, and even major mainstream Democrats are losing their ish on Twitter and other platforms as they realize that policy-wise, Joe Biden may not be the man that they thought he was. They're surprised that Joe Biden, the architect of mass incarceration as Cory Booker called him, Joe Biden, the author of the 1994 crime bill, is siding closer to Republicans on the issue of crime than he is with these woke out of their mind Democrats. The reaction from the left is as predictable as you may imagine, screeching like a bunch of damn banshees like usual on Twitter. Let's take a look and see what all the fuss is about. Let's see what leftoids are outraged about this time. We've got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. Alright friends, so take a look at this headline right over here. Biden bucks liberals and tells Democrats to get tough on crime. President Joe Biden's decision on Thursday on a local crime law sends a national message to fellow Democrats about how he believes that they should address Republican criticism of the nation's rising crime rates. Democrats have focused predominantly on police reform since the George Floyd protests reignited a national debate over race in law enforcement 3 years ago. But rising violent crime rates and growing perceptions of unease in major cities have prompted a chorus of party strategists and officials to call for a tougher approach to counter Republican attacks. Biden, who has a history of pushing for stauncher crime laws, has tried to straddle the Democrats' divide but was forced this week to choose sides when he said that he wouldn't allow the Washington, D.C. city government to enact laws that would lower some crime penalties. If Republicans thought that President Biden would hand them a wedge issue for 2024, they thought wrong, said Democrat strategist Liz Smith, a veteran of former President Barack Obama's re-election campaign and an architect of Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg's rise. It's going to be very hard to define him as soft on crime after he's denounced defunding the police and reducing sentences for crimes like carjacking. And this tweet right over here is what has leftoids absolutely losing their minds. The official President Biden at POTUS account tweets, of course the distinction is clear that it's the President Biden account and not President Biden himself. I support DC statehood and home rule, but I don't support some of the changes DC Council put forward over the mayor's objections, such as lowering penalties for carjacking. If the Senate votes to overturn what DC Council did, I'll sign it. Now let's take a look at some of the responses in the Twitter thread. This Twitter user writes, "Nobody defeats Democrats like other Democrats. You speak up about this, but not Florida's fascism? Coward. This isn't the vibes. Unbelievable. Sir, respectfully, this is ridiculous. The voters of DC elected our leaders. We should have the autonomy enjoyed by the rest of the country. You would never seek to overrule Delaware's state legislature for doing similar. Please read that tweet again, sir. States have the right to raise or lower penalties for crimes committed in their jurisdiction. If you support DC statehood, you should certainly support DC's right to do the same." And honestly, I mean, some of the more coherent tweets that are actually making policy points, I kind of agree with. You know, there is a base level of hypocrisy in what Joe Biden is saying, how he supports DC home rule and supports DC statehood, and he wants to use the bully pulpit to essentially veto decisions being made by DC leadership. But completely outside of that hypocrisy and outside of the fact that honestly, I personally believe that you should just leftoids do what leftoids want to do, let them run the cities into the ground, eventually the pendulum's gonna swing. I want to focus particularly on the hill the Democrats seem so willing to die on. I mean, the lengths that these leftist activists are willing to go to defend criminal action is truly astonishing. I honestly cannot believe that this is even a topic of discussion and debate. Carjackings have reached epidemic levels in places like DC and Philadelphia. There was a huge headline, I think in 2021, it might have been early 2022, where a group of young kids carjacked an Uber driver. The situation got a little bit out of hand, to say the least, and the Uber driver's life was taken, and a tragic situation caught on camera. The video evidence that we've seen the clear statistics showing an epidemic of crime in places like DC and other major Democrat metropolitan areas. It's not really something that I feel like should be up for debate, but of course leftoids never cease to amaze me with what they're willing to defend, and they're willing to go against their own president, calling him out publicly. Even Nancy Pelosi joining on the dog pile. Pelosi slams Biden for handling of DC crime bill, says she wishes he would have told us first. It just goes to show how inept and dysfunctional the Democrat Party really is. You know, that's not to say that Republicans are perfect, but at least Republicans aren't siding politically with freaking criminals that are terrorizing communities. It's absolutely absurd. I'm now seeing certain leftoids calling carjacking a non-violent crime that should be classified as a misdemeanor. I mean, that is simply insane policy, giving the green light to criminals to carjack people at will with no real repercussion. We've seen these kinds of policies in action. They fail 100% of the time. Yet these Democrats continue to double down, even after the very recent Chicago mayoral election, where Lori Lightfoot got absolutely smoked, not even making it past the runoff. You would think that Democrats would move away from all the woke, crazy, out-of-your-mind policy and start coming back down to earth towards some common sense, basic, logical policy, but of course not. The woke cult is exactly that. It's a cult, it's a religion. These woke left activists are married to criminals and unwilling to file for divorce. I find the whole thing utterly ridiculous. And I also find it continues to highlight a key aspect of hypocrisy. The whole rules for thee, but not for me. Don't you find it a little bit curious how President Joe Biden and some other Democrats that are siding with him are getting tough on crime in the DC area, while completely ignoring all the other Democrat cities experiencing what can only be described as crime epidemics? I'm getting a real rules for thee, but not for me vibe, or probably a better description would be NIMBY, a not in my backyard vibe, where weak on crime woke policies that enable and embolden criminals to terrorize communities are okay for the poor people in other neighborhoods, in other major cities, but in Washington, D.C., where all the politicians are, all the Democrat politicians who essentially set the agenda for the rest of the party nationwide, well, those soft on crime policies aren't suitable for them and where they exist. No, of course not. The whole dynamic is ridiculous. If you're supporting a political party that doesn't want to prosecute crimes to the full extent of the law, then you probably need to sit down and have a moment of self-reflection. Ask yourself, what the hell am I doing with my life? And the idea that it's all better now and the Democrats have shifted on their policy stances, thanks to Joe Biden's non-veto and his most recent tweet, again, it's ridiculous. Democrats aren't actually getting tough on crime. They're not changing the agenda. They're still very much pro-crime and pro-criminal. It's just the DCCC's latest strategy shift after Mayor Lori Lightfoot got BTFO'd. Quick, Biden, pretend as if you're tough on crime, to convince voters that we're not absolutely out of our mind nuts. I mean, unironically, the one of two major political parties in the United States of America, wants to decriminalize violent crimes. They're unironically pro-criminal, in my opinion, ahead of law-abiding citizen, and it seems as though they're not even really trying to hide it. When the President of the United States says, hey, maybe we shouldn't be enabling crime and reducing sentences for violent carjackings, the leftoid reaction tells you all that you need to know. That's what I got for you guys, though. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, friends, and I'll see you on the next one.